Evening, everybody. I'd like to take a moment and call the June 26th, 2023 Newmarket Budget Committee meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Ned Carpenter.
Aye. Here.
Brian Hickey.
Here.
Richard Lissavoy.
Here.
Daniel Honan is not here. Brian Rowley.
Here.
Scott Foster is not here. Dan Smith. And Brian Ward.
Here.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, take a moment to open for public forum at 6:31, and there's nobody here, so we'll close public forum at 6:31. So this evening, Bill Tappan's going to give us a presentation on where we stand as we close the month of May for the town's budget. And I'd like to just ask you a favor, if I may. I wear hearing aids, so sometimes it's difficult to hear. So if I go like this or something like that, that'll be a signal to just a little more amplitude.
That's not a problem at all.
Sure. Yeah. He's welcome to sit at the end of the table, but he's not voted in yet.
Okay.
This is Tim Choi. Some of you did not meet him last week.
Brian.
Okay, that's time.
Okay, so we're speaking about the period 11 financial report, and typically I believe we do these quarterly, but I'm not sure why we decided to do it on the period 11 instead of wait till the period end, but anyway, so it won't be quite as exciting as the normal quarterly report. There haven't been much changes, and for one thing, it's been a couple of months have gone by. We're essentially roughly the same as where we were in terms of moving on percentage spend. There is one correction that I wanted to make sure that you're aware of. My apologies. If you look under the expenditures paragraph, the very first one, it says for the general fund in total, the expenditures percentage is 82%, and that's inaccurate. It was 83%, and I mistyped. It is, however, 1% lower than the prior year. That is correct. So it was 83 versus 84 for the prior year. So I just wanted to alert you to that. Then the total operating budget expenditure percentages at 82 as well, which was 3% below the prior year at 85%. So typically, as I mentioned before, we have here's how much you should be spending and for every period. And at this particular period, it's 91.7%, and we're well within range, as you can see. You may have noticed in the next paragraph down, I've been trying to do this whenever we do the reports, that you're getting something of a synopsis about what's been impacting spending and so on throughout the year. The only real significant change to that was at the bottom I put a blip in essentially acknowledging the reality of what's happening in the labor markets and how it's impacted us. And then I gave a specific example for public works and fire, what we did to address that. So anyway, I realized as I was reading through that my prior report hadn't really talked about that, and it is actually a bigger thing than you might imagine. And if any of you are in business, you would know that. Revenues. So again, we're fairly well on track in terms of it being positive. 36,111,835 was accrued year to date versus the 34,409,066 for the same period last year, which was an increase of $2,769. And that's largely due to the tax increase, as you might expect, tax revenue increase. There was also a $164,552 increase in state-related revenue, which was largely due to meals and room tax increases, that which was returned to the state to the town from the state. And then there was a $356,623 increase from charges for services. And as consistently throughout the year, this has been mostly due to ambulance receipts, almost entirely, actually. And then the recreation fund saw a moderate increase of $36,430 due to recreation program enrollment. And then the water fund saw an increase of $180,000, and wastewater experienced an increase of $163,000, and those are both compared to the prior year. So not huge money, but then you're not hoping for it to be. It's not a business. We're not trying to make a profit. Else to say? Not really. Are there any questions?
Yes, I'm just taking a quick look here. So this increase in the revenue from ambulance services and so forth, it looks like it's almost 100% increase in the amount of revenue, because I'm looking at it just occurred to me to look at this, so I could be mistaken here.
Yep.
Here it is, fire and rescue. So fire and rescue has a let's see, the available budget. So fire and rescue, last year we spent $505,000 in budget. This year we had $539,000 in budget. What you're saying is that revenue from because the ambulance receipts is part of their budget, or is it separate from their budget?
It is part of their revenue budget, not the expenditures budget, so just bear that in mind.
Okay.
And part of that, I don't want to get out ahead of my skis, but I believe that the part of that is because we hired somebody who was as a paramedic, as opposed to, so they have a higher skill set, so you can take different types of calls than we could before, which have apparently a higher value. And so that's a major reason for that. And that I'm not sure if they're full or part-time, but I believe that person is also full-time. So that is why we would see that kind of increase. I have to say I'm not sure that that was anticipated at that level, but it was a significant increase for sure.
It'd be interesting to know what the change is in terms of the the call rate.
Yeah,
How many calls they're making versus previous years.
I mean, yeah, if the story is that we can respond to more calls with in-town resources, I feel much happier about that than that the call volume doubled, I guess.
Yeah.
That is the idea, but to be completely honest, I'm not sure how we track that data. So I'd have to investigate further to have a good answer for you.
Anybody have any questions?
When it comes to staffing, you said that there was a bunch of positions or several positions that were open for a while in the DPW and if you revise the pay programs, I guess, for the new people, would then that have to be done? Was there a compression with the existing staff as well?
Yeah, so that's a really fair question, and maybe unsurprisingly, that did come up, because the idea of fairness is something that gets considered in this whole process. So, interestingly, coming from the majority of my life in industry, we didn't really think about that all that much often, because there's fluctuations in the market when you're hiring, and so you're not necessarily concerned with making sure that everybody who has been hired, a year beforehand is adjusted upwards so that they, aren't mad because someone else came in at a higher rate. But in this case, that attention was given to that in order to make sure that you weren't then having somebody walk out the door because, they're mad that John, who just got hired, is now equal to me in pay when I've been, 10 years or whatever.
So it's basically like recruitment and retention.
Correct, yeah. And so the other thing is, and I'm not sure that you were aware of this, but we did do a salary survey within the last year. And so that also helped inform some decision-making in terms of what ought to be upper, lower limits and where we stood in all of that for a variety of positions throughout the town.
The labor market seems to be moving pretty quickly in terms of, wages and acceptable wages. So if that were done a year ago, is that still relevant information?
Okay. Fair question, again. I'd say yes, because we were really trying to put bake in some growth into that, knowing that we were, yes, in a dynamic situation. That's a really good point. I'm not, and I don't think we suggested that we do another one right away. But for sure, it was recommended to us, and I recommended that we do this again within the next, say, 3 years. So, yeah, that's a good question here.
So then there's what I'm trying to get at is that the new people came in here, you also built the other existing staff up so that you didn't have any, loss of.
Correct. Yeah, and it wasn't,
double whammy.
I'm not sure if you were having the camera focused on you when you just did that, but the new people here and the older people being brought up, it was actually our levels were somewhere around here, and we brought this up, and these people went up like that.
Mhm.
So it was a more appropriate adjustment based on, time of service.
Yeah, you index
So.
the rates for the different job
Yeah.
positions.
That's right.
So one of the things I noticed here, just looking at these, like, do we have a vacancy in economic development or something like that? Because it looks like we've only spent about 10% of the budget so far, and that would be 4651, line item 4651.
Yeah, I believe that economic development is actually overseen by the town manager,
Mm-hmm.
if I remember right. And I think what had been done in the past, and again, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe that what had been done in the past was someone was hired external, like we do with legal or whatever, and they were paid a certain amount of money to do economic development work. And I think that they were dissatisfied with the performance or something. I don't know, it just wasn't working out as they hoped. And the town manager had confidence that he could cover that without having that extra person and use that budget appropriately. So that's.
So line item 4444, social services grants.
Yes.
Is this a scenario where when you do the work, then you can bill for it and get reimbursed or something, or?
No, that's also a good question. So the reason, this has been kind of an internal discussion recently because we're at this place right now, as you just noted. So what happens is typically organizations will send out information asking for a certain amount of money for the coming fiscal year. And for whatever reason, not all the organizations follow up with us to ask for the disbursements. And so we end up where we are. I'm not sure why I'm responsible for chasing them down to give them money. However, we have talked about this, and one of the things that I've come to realize in the last few years is that this happened recently. One of the organizations merged into another. Now they're not the same place. They still do the same work. They have, I believe they still use the old name, but now all, invoicing, billing, whatever, payables go through another area. So had we continued that, we would have been sending a check into the void, essentially. So we're continuing on this process of waiting for them. I think NYAA, which is the Youth Athletic Association, that was another one where we're wondering, geez, are they going to ask for the money? Because I'm sure there are sports programs going on. And then someone did contact, so we issued a check to them of $20,000, whatever. So this one's a little bit different because that's not grants, it's the social service grants. And those are usually agencies who provide services to us. They give us an anticipated amount of money that they expect to spend in service to this community, and then we budget for that. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay, thank you. And let's see. Okay.
So Bill, in the water treatment and wastewater treatment, if I compare this May to May of the last fiscal year, there's a huge influx of dollars in this month for this year. Is that just timing? Is there anything going on there? Like wastewater treatment fund revenue is over $500,000 just in May.
Okay. I'm not sure. It could be, yes, just a timing issue, and in fact, when I look at this, it does look like that's a month-to-date revenue change, which is significant, and I think it's just the timing of when the, not invoices, but when the bills go out.
Okay.
And you see this too, if we've had, like for example, in the fall, if the bills go out, they may be delayed. Sometimes it's related to how quickly we've gotten information back about what the tax rate is going to be. So, tied to that.
Yeah, I mean, the year-to-date looks right. It's just the month. I was just curious. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, you're right about that.
I wonder if there's, has anything to do, because a year ago, if you remember, he was talking about, they have that retention pond so they can bring in more waste to process, and if we're looking at some of the added revenue
That
from
would be wastewater treatment, right? And
Yeah.
he is getting, I know he's getting more revenue, but it's still like way out of kilter, $500,000 just the one month.
Yeah.
It's like a fifth of the year.
Yeah.
That is a good point, though. That is
Yeah.
actually happening, and it is driving revenue.
Do you have any, maybe you don't have any information on it, but is everyone aware that that there's a leak in the, in the high-pressure line coming from Bay Road under the river?
Yes.
I was just
I'm not
reading it.
laughing because it's funny. It's a crazy thing. Did you listen to the discussion on this, on the,
Council?
thing?
Yes. On the 21st, we talked about it. Basically, the break in the river, originally they thought it was 4 feet under, but time has come over, so it's even deeper under there. The person they got in contact with, we worked with them before, at minimum might be able to do it for $180,000. That's if they can dig underwater by hand. If it's by machine, which I think from my newest information they're probably going to have to do, it's going to be closer to $210,000. Considering that original estimates were at $500,000, this is still, it's still a bad situation, but not as bad as it could be. We voted to withdraw that money. I'm trying to find. it's in my notes what fund they pulled it from. But the company that, as you doing it, has done work with us before. We've got the money out, and the work is proceeding right now. So.
My understanding, Brian, is originally they were talking about doing above ground, sort of temporary, but now not?
Well, the fix they're doing right now under the water is still going to be temporary. It'll last for a couple more years, but there's a lot of easements and such, and apparently there's been some talks with some property owners and such about, building new stuff over their lawns and easements. So this is the fix we can do right now. Longer term plan is something I think we're looking into.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. The idea of having it come across
The bridge we found out can't hold it.
That's another
Yeah.
issue.
The pedestrian walkway bridge between the mills. It's still safe for pedestrians, but not for vehicles and such. So they are now looking into how much it will cost to replace that, and potentially, since it's been something that's been brought up a lot, adding another pedestrian bridge that would connect it to Heron Point, right, from the river, from Chinburg. That's been something that people talked about, and it's just been floated. This is super early, but the bridge is safe for pedestrian walkway. It's not safe for motorized vehicles. It's just some other fun thing we found out we're going to have to pay for when we found out we had to pay for this new thing.
replacing that bridge isn't gonna be cheap. We spent, $250,000 to replace the bridge at the south end of Livermore,
Okay.
and that bridge is only a third of the length of the bridge you're talking
Yeah.
about.
And was that also a pedestrian bridge?
It's a pedestrian bridge,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, it's a truss bridge, but it's just, if you're gonna carry a heavier load, you just gotta be designed differently, so. Yeah. Okay, anybody else have any more questions for Bill?
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maybe next year we'll move the month off to June, and then we can get people on a more regular schedule.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so, thank you very much. So we have, two sets of minutes to approve. We have, we'll start with the May last meeting minutes, and, if everyone's had a chance to review them. The only thing I noticed was that in terms of who was not present, it was not Amy Tilton, but it was Dan and Dan and Brian, but Dan was the switch from Amy. So that's line 12, change it from school board rep Amy Tilton to school board rep Dan Smith. That's the only amendment that I had.
Just a quick question. I watched the meeting afterwards. Am I able to vote on the meeting minutes now, or does I still have to abstain?
Pardon me?
If I watch the meeting online, do I minutes, or do I have to abstain?
I think you have to abstain.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the best thing to do is just
Okay.
abstain.
Yeah.
Okay? Are we all set? Okay, those in favor of approving the minutes out of the May 22nd meeting minutes as amended? All in favor? Who attended? Aye. Okay, so, those are approved. Then the next set of minutes is for the April meeting. I included those in the packet as well. I have my own notes here. Anybody have any comments on that? That was the school district meeting, school district discussion. No amendments? Okay. Everybody was here for that meeting. So all in favor of approving the April 24th minutes?
Aye.
Okay, those are
Abstain
approved.
on that one.
Thank you. All right, so, Tim, is it Choi? Chu.
Two.
So, does anybody have any questions for for Tim? He's put in his application to be a member of the Budget Committee. I passed around his resume, and I think he knows something about accounting.
Well, that, I need to make a statement, even though I spent over 4 decades in accounting and financial management, but all those years, they were all in private enterprises. And as I was here last month, and then I look at all that, and I must say, I would be a new kid on the block. I will have a lot to learn, because what I learned in both schools and real world, I've never had any experience in governmental accounting. I must point that out.
Well, join the club.
Okay. So, I think we're supposed to just accept
Somebody would
your,
make a motion, right?
yeah,
So I'll make a motion that we accept Tim's candidacy and be a member of the committee. I'll second.
okay, a motion made by,
Rich.
thank you.
That's okay.
Anyway, by Rich and seconded by Brian Ward. All in favor of accepting, say aye.
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 Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
And I'll just say that many of us didn't have a lot of municipal government experience before we got involved, so, you know, it's a learning experience for many.
Yes, I will have a lot to learn.
Okay, great, great. Okay, so the last thing I just had on here was we had polled the committee about moving the August meeting from the 26th to the 21st. Everybody was amenable to that. So that's the only amendment to the calendar, and I'll just issue an updated calendar to everybody by email. But the August meeting will change from the 26th to the 21st, and so I think it works out well for everybody. As I mentioned earlier, I now have a business center that's fit in its place. So
We don't have a July meeting.
we don't have a July, but if we can put together some of these meetings with the police and with the fire department and with the public works and the wastewater, would everybody interested in trying to attend those? I'll see if I can get Steve to put that together for a couple days during the month of July.
I'll just add that I've gone on these tours before, and it's really a great educational experience.
Yeah, it's really good. And the police will probably talk to us about the conditions in the police department and
You
stuff
get
like
to
that.
tour it and see it and understand it, so it's very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'll work with Steve and try to get that resolved in the next week. And, okay. Does anybody have a conflict? Is there like a time period that doesn't work for anyone in July?
No, I was just going to say, the master plan update came in, and one discussion was expanding the police department. Some preliminary ideas have come out, but again, just, it's something it has been taken, been known of year 4 now.
Okay. So the next meeting is August 21st. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
The second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.